You're listening to the Telltale Channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. The biggest of Chungai. The one downside to modern medicine is that people stupid enough to ignore quarantine have a pretty big chance to be this stupid and still survive without natural selection rightfully removing them. Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, I don't want to see anybody die. I would love to live in a world where, nobody died. I don't want anybody to die. There's a book called Incognito, The Secret Lives of the Brain. I read that book years and years ago, before, maybe right around the time when I was exiting Jehovah's Witnesses. My ex-brother-in-law got it for me on Audible as a gift. The one that helped me exit Jehovah's Witnesses. He got that book for me. And he also gave me his copy of Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan. So this book, Incognito, Secret Lives of the Brain, talks about the case where there was a bell tower shooter, I believe, or a clock tower shooter. The guy was fairly well-rounded. He was a nice guy. He was a part of the community and everything, until one day he goes up to this clock tower with a rifle and just takes out everybody from the top of the tower. And nobody understood what happened. Nobody understood why this was taking place. What broke in him? What changed? What snapped? And they opened his brain to find a large tumor sitting on the impulse control part of his brain. If that hadn't been there, then that wouldn't have happened. There's another story of a guy who was living a perfectly normal life. He loved his mother-in-law and his father-in-law, loved them, loved his wife, loved his family. One day, he drove to their house and killed them, his parents-in-law, and wrote a note saying, "Please study my brain so that you can figure out why this happened to me so it doesn't happen to anybody else." And again, they found a tumor. Ultimately, free will is a religious concept, not a scientific concept. If you understand somebody's life path, they were exposed to crack in utero, for example, grew up in a bad neighborhood, mistreated by their families, by their parents, by their single mother, mistreated terribly, and grew up to have no chance at life, had no idea how to even get into college, wasn't even on their radar, didn't have the money for it, didn't have the money for food when they were 12, so they fell into a gang so that they could eat. Can you blame that person for what they had to do to survive? You really can't. You can't blame them for that stuff. You can't blame the guy for killing his parents-in-law when there was a tumor pressing on the impulse section of his brain. He loved them. He had no choice. It was out of his hands. It wasn't a free will, I'm choosing to do this kind of thing. When you start to study the brain and how it works, you start to realize that the decisions that people make aren't really decisions. They are almost predetermined in some ways. You guys should definitely read the book Incognito, Secret Lives of the Brain. The writer, David Eagleman, had this laboratory set up where he would have a clock, basically, that would flash random numbers and letters on the screen. And he would sit people down and he'd tell them, watch that clock, and the very moment that you decide to raise either your left hand or your right hand, remember which number was on the screen at that moment, and then raise your hand. He also had them hooked up to some machinery to detect different patterns in their brain and things like that. He discovered that the decision was made up to 5 seconds earlier then they consciously knew that it was made. If they were going to raise their left hand, there was a part of their brain that lit up that he could watch light up 5 seconds before they knew which one they were going to raise. Your decisions are not boiled down to free will as much as you think they are. So I have sympathy for people like Trump supporters and super spreaders, people that genuinely want to spread the virus, because everyone is a hero of their own stories. They all believe that what they're doing is the right thing, unless there's some serious mental condition like psychopathy or sociopathy or something. The vast majority of people believe they're doing the right thing. So I hesitate to say natural selection isn't acting on these people. I don't want anybody to die. I want them to get better. I want people to get better.